SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝදායි.
Tonight, 48th UNHRC session. Sri Lanka responds to Michelle Bachelet and holds its ground on 46/1.
This will polarize our society as we experienced with Resolution 30/1.
While some recognise Sri Lanka's positive strides, others don't.
We're delighted by the commitment of its government towards human rights, having undermined terrorism and restored peace and stability in the country.
It is important international community support Sri Lanka.
We are disappointed that even the limited progress made on accountability on key emblematic cases has regressed.
Respite. State Minister of COVID Disease Control hopeful that an extension to the lockdown won't be needed. Successes and misconceptions. Sri Lanka fully vaccinates over 50% of the population while battling hurdles which come in the form of myths.
Sexual dysfunction or infertility are unfounded and baseless myths.
Retirement of a loyal servant. Lasit Malinga hangs up his T20 boots. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Tuesday, the 14th of September, 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයිෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanaik. Now then, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires today responded to the remarks made by the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, yesterday. Addressing the third meeting of the 48th regular session of the UN Human Rights Council, he outright rejected the proposals for any external initiatives established by Resolution 46/1, saying that such initiatives will polarize the country, as done by Resolution 30/1, which was co-sponsored by the Government of Good Governance. There were also some positive comments on Sri Lanka by some nations who recognized the progress made by the island nation. However, some accused the country of going backwards.
12 years ago, Sri Lanka eradicated LTT terrorism on its soil. We have restored peace, security and stability for the benefit of our people. We held firm to our democratic traditions and elections were held at regular intervals with high levels of voter participation, most recently at the 2019 presidential and 2020 parliamentary polls. The government is committed to holding the provincial council elections at the earliest. We are dealing with post-conflict recovery from the perspective of healing. Most recently, 16 LTT cadres convicted of serious terrorist crimes were granted presidential pardons. The success of post-conflict demining, reconstruction and resettlement programs has contributed immensely to national reconciliation. Despite the daily challenges of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic, the Office on Missing Persons as its core function is finalizing the list of missing persons in collaboration with other agencies. The Office for Reparations has processed 3,775 claims this year. The Office for National Unity and Reconciliation continues its 8-point action plan. The National Human Rights Commission is carrying on its mandate. A steering committee on SDG 16 is working towards enhancing peace, justice and strong institutions. A cabinet subcommittee was appointed to revisit the PTA and to bring it in line with international norms and best practices. A report will be submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers at the end of this month. An advisory board was appointed to look into cases of detention under the PTA and to make recommendations to deal with such cases expeditiously. Speedy disposal of cases under the PTA is also taking place. A commission of inquiry headed by a sitting judge of the Supreme Court was established to address issues on accountability and missing persons and to revisit recommendations by previous commissions. The COI submitted its interim report to the the President. The final report will be submitted within the next 6 months. We are maintaining vigorous engagement with civil society to obtain their insights and to harness their support in achieving reconciliation and development. Sri Lanka continues to investigate and prosecute the perpetrators of the appalling terrorist attack on Easter Sunday in 2019, complying with due process of law in all respects. As always, we will remain vigilant in combating terrorism and protecting Sri Lankans of all religions. We reject the proposal for any external initiatives purportedly established by Resolution 46/1, while domestic processors are vigorously addressing the relevant matters. This will polarize our society as we experienced with Resolution 30/1. The Council must adhere to its founding principles. External initiatives embarked upon without the cooperation of the country concerned cannot achieve their stated goals and will be subject to politicization. The resources expended on this initiative are unwarranted, especially when they are urgently needed for humanitarian and other constructive purposes in many parts of the world. Under the current and pressing challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, we consider it a basic duty of a government to ensure the uninterrupted supply of commodities essential to the life of the community. We are open in acknowledging our challenges, and as a responsible and democratic government, we are committed to achieving tangible progress on the entire range of issues relating to accountability, reconciliation, human rights, peace, and sustainable development.
In the meantime, Great Britain accused Sri Lanka of regressing on the accountability front.
We note Sri Lanka's declared intent to promote reconciliation and to ensure the continuity of the work of the Office of Missing Persons and the Office for Reparations. We call on the government to ensure the political independence of these institutions. We are disappointed that even the limited progress made on accountability on key emblematic cases has regressed. We further reiterate our request made at the last session for independent and impartial investigations into deaths in police custody. The government of Sri Lanka's outreach to the international community and statements of intent regarding reforming the Prevention of Terrorism Act are welcome, though our long-standing concerns about this legislation still remain. We urge the government of Sri Lanka to bring its counter-terrorism legislation in line with its international human rights obligations. We call on Sri Lanka to cooperate fully with the High Commissioner and remain ready to support the government on the implementation of Resolution 46/1.
Meanwhile, Japan called on the international community to support Sri Lanka in its voluntary actions.
We understand that the government is taking various measures, including investigation by the Commission of Inquiry and payment of compensation. It is important that Sri Lanka continue to take voluntary actions and that the international community support Sri Lanka in this effort.
Meanwhile, Venezuela commended Sri Lanka's efforts towards progress on the front of democracy.
The Nicaraguan government has demonstrated its commitment to human rights, to its people, and has broken the anti-democratic violence which has been funded from outside. In Sri Lanka, we're delighted by the commitment of its government towards human rights, having undermined terrorism and restored peace and stability in the country, and dealt with success with issues around reconciliation subsequent to the conflict as well. So working towards democratic elections.
Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana says that there is no significant changes to the government's economic policy, despite there being a change at the very top of the central bank. Addressing the weekly cabinet media briefing today, Dr. Patirana also rejected claims that the country's tea production is set to suffer this month and the next. Let's take a look at what was said at the media briefing and some of the decisions taken by the cabinet.
Cabinet co-spokesperson Dr. Ramesh Patirana today addressed claims that the country's tea production is expected to face a decline in the months of September and October due to shortage of fertilizer.
As you know, Sri Lankan tea is the most expensive tea in the world. We are getting about $4 to $4.5 per kg, which is much more expensive than tea that is produced in India and Kenya. And also in relation to the tea production, there is no significant drop as such. For month of July, we have produced 26 million kilos in this country, which is the average production. In fact, it's little higher than the averages that we have recorded in last year's. First 6 months of the year, we have produced 162 million kilos, which is above the average. So fortunately, we had very good climatic conditions, and we also had decent amount of fertilizer to be distributed. But we are very closely monitoring the situation in month of September. Historically, we have seen the reduction of tea production in months of September and October due to the drought and the conditions prevailing in the country. But we are closely monitoring, and we are looking at different avenues of reducing organic fertilizer and also to import certain nutrients which are required for the agricultural sector generally.
Dr. Pathirana was also quizzed on whether a solution has been found to a fungal disease plaguing the rubber plantations, with production also down owing to the fungus.
Particular diseases reported in different parts of the world, including Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and other countries where there are rubber plantations. Rubber Research Institute is also experimenting in relation to the disease and utilizing different mechanisms, including certain fungicides. But there is a practical difficulty because this disease is most of the time the fungus are on the downside of the leaves, and there are difficulties in relation to spraying mechanisms. It's little difficult to curtail, as you know now. Yes, it is obviously affecting the productivity of the tree, but also the Rubber Research Institute at this particular moment, they are liaising with the other institutions worldwide to find out a definitive treatment for that. But as at now, there is no definitive treatment found in the world, but hopefully we should be able to find something sooner than later.
The Cabinet co-spokesperson was also asked whether there are any changes to the economic policy, especially in the backdrop of the change of central bank governor.
There is no significant change from the policy, but we are trying to strengthen our economy. That had been the case since the beginning of this year. And to do that, we have curtailed the imports, and also we are trying to improve the exports. Fortunately, our exports have gone up a little in all sectors, including apparel, plantation, and also other engineering related stuff has gone up. So we are narrowing down the gap between the exports and imports, which is something very important for the foreign reserves and also for the currency. We keep our fingers crossed that we're looking forward to receive some investments also, and also foreign remittance would be increasing in time to come, and the world as a general phenomenon coming out of this pandemic scenario. So hopefully we'll get tourists also to come to this country by November, December, and we'll generate much needed dollars in the local economy. That is the way forward, and also specific plans would be detailed in the 2022 budget speech by Minister of Finance, Basil Rajapaksa.
In the meantime, the Cabinet of Ministers has given approval to publish the policy target of renewable energy development. The government has taken a policy decision to meet 70% of the country's electricity requirement through renewable energy sources by 2030 and to be a net carbon zero nation by 2050. The Ceylon Electricity Board is required to prepare the minimum cost long-term generation plan subject to Sri Lanka Electricity Act No. 2 of 2009 and its amendments within the policy framework of Vistas of Prosperity. The Cabinet also gave the go-ahead to prepare a mechanism for the use of minerals that are not being utilised despite already being recognised. As such, a proposal was approved to appoint a committee of eminent persons in the field to conduct a detailed study on where these minerals are located, quantities of the deposits and the products in which those minerals can be used in. Meanwhile, the purchasing program for the Yalla season has also been green-lighted. Paddy of the Nadu variety will be purchased at 55 rupees per kilogram by the Paddy Marketing Board.
Now then, a grenade was found from a prominent hospital in Narahempita today. It is reported that the pin of the explosive device had been removed and it had been set up to explode. 3 persons are currently being questioned by the police.
A hand grenade was found from a prominent hospital located in the area of Narahempita this afternoon. It was found from a toilet on the hospital's first floor. Police and bomb disposal teams arrived as soon as the news broke to inspect the scene. A team of high-ranking police officers, including Senior Deputy Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakon, was also there. Some of the relevant footage was recorded on a mobile phone. It is meanwhile reported that a hospital employee, an eyewitness and another are currently being questioned by the Colombo Crime Division. Police investigations have uncovered that the grenade's pin had been removed and the grenade had been attached to a mosquito repellent coil set up to explode. An investigation into the incident is underway by several police teams with the use of hospital CCTV footage.
Big 3.
Now, with coronavirus cases declining by about 50% in the country, State Minister of COVID Disease Control, Dr. Sudarshini Fernando-Pillai, is optimistic that an extension to the prevailing lockdown will not be required. She says that the country will go for a systematic reopening, adding that a new way of life will have to be embraced from here on.
The steady downturn in daily COVID caseload as well as deaths has led to many calling for lifting of the quarantine curfew, currently in effect until 4 a.m. on the 21st. From what was 5,000 at one stage, new daily cases have reduced by almost half, with 2,560 being confirmed yesterday. The expert view, however, is that this figure should be brought down even further to a point where only 2.5% of those being tested returning positive results. With another 6 full days to go until the curfew is lifted, State Minister of COVID Disease Control Dr. Sudarshini Fernando-Pillai is hopeful that an extension to the lockdown will not be requited.
වෙනකොට ආසාදිත සංඛ්‍යාව වගේම මරණවල අඩුවීමක් දකිනවා මොන චෝදනා එල්ල කෙරුවත් මේ සති 4ක කාලය තුල මේ ලොක්ඩවුන් එක ශාල පිටිවහලක් වුණා රෝගීන්ගේ අඩුවීමට. ඒ වගේම එන්නත් කරන. මේ සති 4ක කාලය හොඳටම ප්‍රමාණවත් රෝගීන් අඩු වෙනවා මරණ අඩු වෙන නිසා ඉදිරියේදී මම හිතන්නේ ලැබෙන සෞන්දර්යයෙන් පස්සේ රට වහයි කියලා රට විවෘත කරලා අලුත් ජීවන රටාවකට මේ කොවිඩ් එක්ක එන්නත් කරන්නේ සහ අනිකුත් සෞඛ්‍ය ආරක්ෂිත ක්‍රමවේද අනුගමනය කරමින් රට
With there being some criticism over the lack of strict policing of the quarantine curfew, the Sri Lanka Medical Association stressed a stringent lockdown is not the practical solution.
If we implement 100% lockdown, then we know that we easily would achieve the control of infection in about 3 weeks. But then at the same time, we have to understand that there are essential needs of people that we will have to maintain during even a lockdown. So one will have to balance between from a 100% lockdown to a 100% opening of the country.
In any case, the effect the lockdown has had on the country's health system becomes all too evident when looking at the numbers related to beds allocated for COVID treatment.
In 224 treatment centers, there are 39,889 beds available for the treatment of COVID patients, in which there are 23,237 beds occupied at the moment. And 97 ICU beds are also being occupied at the moment. 9,712 PCR tests also have been performed yesterday, and 2,571 rapid antigens also have been reported to be performed.
So far today, 1,755 new cases of the virus have been confirmed in Sri Lanka. With the 1,483 patients being discharged today, 414,295 persons have now recovered from the novel coronavirus in the island.
Now, Sri Lanka's vaccination drive hit another key milestone. As of last evening, over 50% of the country's total population had been fully vaccinated. The feat comes in just under, or in fact under 6 months. Make that 8 months. Now, CNN's global vaccination tracker ranks Sri Lanka 67th in vaccinations, with some countries which are vaccine producers not being much better off than the island.
On the 28th of January this year, Sri Lanka started its vaccine rollout to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. In under 8 months, the island has managed to fully vaccinate over 50% of its total population. With the 147,114 vaccinations carried out yesterday, Sri Lanka by last evening had fully immunized 10,762,627 people. Though there had been sizable bilateral vaccine donations from some countries, with China being the most notable, the vaccine doses were purchases from the government. As per CNN's global vaccination tracker, Sri Lanka is ranked 67th in the world in terms of fully vaccinated population. The likes of Portugal, United Arab Emirates, Singapore, Germany, Spain and the UK are leading the table. The United States has also vaccinated 53.2% of its total population. But none of these countries are lower middle-income countries like Sri Lanka. What's more, some of the countries above Sri Lanka are also vaccine-producing countries. Taking a look at the South Asian region, Sri Lanka is only behind Bhutan and the Maldives. Though their full vaccination percentages of 61.3 and 58 are superior to that of Sri Lanka, both those countries have a population less than 1 million. All in all, it is evident that the island is punching above its weight. When the national immunization drive got underway, the biggest hurdle was the scarcity of vaccine doses. But now there is a different issue to contend with: fake news. Some youth in the country have shown a vaccine aversion. The reason? Alleged slide in sexual performance. There are other misconceptions too. Fake news have also led to some people questioning the vaccine efficacy.
All these vaccines have scientifically proven to give more than 85% protection against the severe disease and death. They all are with minimal side effects, except the well-known side effects that are there with AstraZeneca, the blood clotting, as well as the Pfizer in children, very occasionally may cause cardiac problems. With regard to Sinopharm, I need to say that this is a vaccine with the minimum known side effects. There is a myth with regard to vaccines among the younger population here in Sri Lanka: sexual dysfunction or infertility. They both are unfounded and baseless myths, and I would encourage all younger generation to obtain their vaccine, whatever is available for them, as early as possible.
Also touching on child vaccinations, Dr. Gunaratna said that the process needs extra attention of the medical authorities.
When we vaccinate children, it has to be carried out very meticulously, methodically by the doctors and with the consent of parents, and the records have to be maintained as it had been carried out for decades here in Sri Lanka. I think that it becomes essential that we incorporate the system of vaccination to the hospital setting.
In other local news, Colombo Chief Magistrates Court has rejected the application filed by a former governor of the Western Province, Azad Saleh, seeking his release. The application was taken up before Chief Magistrate Buddhika Sri Ragala today. Saleh's legal counsel, President's Counsel Maitri Gunaratna, told the court that no evidence was found to prove Saleh had links with the suspects of the Mavanella Buddha statue vandalism case. The Attorney General's Department, however, said that another case filed against the accused under the Prevention of Terrorism Act and the UN International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights is currently being heard before the Colombo High Court and is scheduled to be taken up in November. After taking the submissions made by both parties into consideration, the Chief Magistrate rejected Saleh's application. Now, the trade account deficit has widened on a year-on-year basis in the month of July this year, making it the fifth consecutive month to have an expansion in the trade account for the year. Although export earnings have seen an increase during the month, expenditure on imports has witnessed an increase at a faster pace. Fuel is chief among the contributors in the widening of the trade deficit.
The trade account deficit has recorded an expansion on a year-on-year basis to $607 million in July 2021 compared to $209 million deficit recorded in July 2020. The cumulative deficit in the trade account from the January to July period also widened to $4,922 million from $3,471 million in the corresponding period of 2020. Fuel is named the biggest contributor to the widening of the trade deficit. Export earnings has increased during July compared to the same month last year. However, expenditure on imports has increased at a faster pace, causing the trade deficit to widen for the fifth consecutive month. Exports performed well, with merchandise exports for the month of July recording an increase of 1.7% to $1,104 million compared to July the previous year. Cumulative export earnings from January to July period this year amounted to $6,803 million compared to the $5,498 million recorded in the corresponding period in 2020. Workers' remittances declined in July 2021 compared to July 2020. Workers' remittances amounted to $453 million during July 2021. Cumulative remittances during the January to July period in 2021 amounted to $3,778 million, displaying a marginal growth of 2.6% year-on-year.
Now, taking a look at the Colombo Bourse, the all-share price index ended at 8,692.60, following a gain of 155.72 points. While the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks gained 52.25 points to close at 3,256.32. The market turnover was 3.5 billion rupees. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with a brief report on today's market performance.
Today we saw the index bouncing back after significant declines in the market. The ASPI came back strongly with a 155-point gain as the ASPI crossed the 8,600 mark to end at 8,692 points, just below the 8,700 mark. In addition to that, we saw the S&P SL20 also gaining strongly with a 61-point gain. So overall, it was a positive day and the investors were on a positive mindset. There were a lot of bargain hunting around with a significant decline in some of the prices. However, turnover was comparatively lower, 3.5 billion rupees of turnover. We can identify it as a moderate level of turnover because we've seen today we are registering only about 25,000 transactions, again onto the moderate side. Overall, we saw the transportation sector led by Expo Lanka leading the turnover levels. In addition to that, next in line was the capital goods sector, which topped the turnover list.
The rupee, meanwhile, remained unchanged at 202.99 cents against the US dollar today. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee fared against other major currencies during the day. Sri Lanka pacer Lasith Malinga has decided to bring his international 2020 career to an end. Malinga, who has set several records, is one of the best ever bowlers Sri Lanka has produced.
Malinga played 30 test matches, 226 ODIs and 84 T20s for Sri Lanka, picking up 546 wickets. He last played a T20 international for Sri Lanka in March last year against West Indies in Pallekele. Malinga's glorious international career has seen some incredible highs representing the national side. Though he was overlooked for the looming ICC 2020 World Cup, it was under Malinga's stewardship that Sri Lanka won the 2014 edition of the Cup in Bangladesh. Known for his inch-perfect Yorkers, Malinga is the leading wicket-taker in T20 international cricket with 107 scalps. There is also 2 T20 international hat-tricks against his name. Malinga retired from Test cricket in 2011 to concentrate on the shorter formats of the game. His statement on Twitter read, "Hanging up my T20 shoes and retiring from all forms of cricket. Thankful to all those who supported me in my journey and looking forward to sharing my experience with young cricketers in the years to come." Unquote.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.